Hey everybody, it's Ed, and welcome back to the channel. I know I've been gone for a little while. I took about a week and a half off since I did my review on Good e-reader here a while back. But today we're going to talk about what I think is a really important piece of what my channel tries to do, and maybe the way and the lens that I look at the world through when it comes to intentional technologies. And that's kind of the term I've been using here recently to talk about why I use specific technologies for specific tasks. This is going to be a fun video. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more conversational. I'm not really going to do a tech demo. I may hold up a device here or there. It's more going to be a presentation of me talking about my story and why I believe that technology can be both an exceptional tool and an enhancement to your life, but also a hindrance depending on how we use that. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. All right. So, one thing that I think is really important to understand about what I call intentional technology means that there's thought behind the process. So, when you're thinking about a new technology or thinking about adopting something to enhance what you're already doing, there needs to be a very real clarity of thought and intention behind that. If what you need is a device for all things or something that you think has to do everything or replace every other device you have, I think in most cases you're going to be sorely disappointed because, quite frankly, different technologies are better at different things. And there's also the whole idea of barrier to entry or skill set or learning curve. And I think that's where, my discussions around technology, specifically both in the e-ink space, but also just technology in general, differ somewhat compared to some of the other creators out there. And again, this started as a hobby, and it's quite frankly still a hobby. I may be quote unquote monetized, but I have yet to see any income from this really. But it's something that I enjoy doing, and I enjoy the conversations that we're having. One thing that's really important to me, and I have a ton of respect for all of the creators out there, both large and small. As many of you know, my background and my story, I came in to try and find an e-ink tablet, wasn't sure what to get, had seen a Remarkable in person, and then found My Deep Guide with Voya, Kit Betts Masters, and his channel talking at the time, it was called Gorilla Physics, and he was talking about technology and kind of how he used it every day in the academic setting, and that really spoke to me. Then I found Brandon Boswell, and since then I've made friends in this space. And there are other creators who are smaller than those larger creators, and that would be everybody from Jeffrey Moss, who does really interesting reviews, rants about tech with Roderick. And his channel is phenomenal, and he's gaining a larger and larger follower base by the day. Vladimir Kostek, his reviews I think are very interesting, and they all review a lot of devices or a lot of different technologies in some cases, and I'm pretty selective in what I review, and that's not a criticism on them or saying that my way is the right way or the wrong way. It's just that the things I tend to review and talk about the most are the things I use on a daily basis. And I haven't even begun to cover all of them that I use, like to create this video. I've kind of shown them and I put them on my blog for you to be able to see what I use. But I really want to start talking more and more about the things that really make, my work life better and easier to get the things done that I want to do. And that includes everything from e-ink to the camera I'm recording on now to the stream deck that you all have seen in another video. But one thing that I think is, and this is where I saw a really interesting video both by Roderick and by Vlad on, kind of getting distractions out of the way. getting beyond the clutter that can happen by a software package that may be just too much for what you're trying to accomplish. And the reason I bring that up is because as much as I really respect Voya at My Deep Guide, and I think he's 100% correct when he says, distraction free can be misused and miscategorized as a catchphrase or a strictly marketing tool. And I do believe that that can be the case. But I also believe that just because I can take my phone, which I absolutely love my Galaxy S23 very much, and I know that I can take this device and I can turn it into, and Vlad did a really cool thing on the rise of the dumb phone, so I'll link that video below. I know I can turn this into a quote unquote dumb phone, but why would you? Why would you buy something with all of this power, all of this capability, and then not use that capability when it's for the right task? And I think that's where the whole idea of intentional technology comes around. And Vlad talks about this, and Kit talks about it quite a bit. This idea of a flow state. My term is intentional technology, but it's the same kind of premise in that this phone is a great, powerful tool, and it does some things very, very well. I've used it a lot as a camera, actually, because the video capabilities of that phone are just that good. It'll do tracking. It does all of the things you can get a more expensive, stable camera for, and it makes a huge difference in some of the creative ways I've been able to do some things. The same is true of the Supernode. And, I have the A6X2, but my main driver is and probably will be until the A5X2 comes out is the A5X. I use this device every single day, and I use it because it's intentional. I wanted something that wasn't quite to the point of the remarkable and as locked down as that, but that was very much in the idea of the flow state, as Vlad and Kit talk about. I wanted something that would allow me to not worry about distractions. And I don't just mean distractions in the sense of notifications. And I think that might be where some of the conversation around, oh, well, you can put it in do not disturb, or you can put it in airplane mode. You can turn the features off. Again, I agree with that. But why should I have to do that if I really want to go distraction free? Why even have a device that has all of those distractions built in? And I know, the argument always is you can use your own self control. You can be very much disciplined, and that's true. And I have to be disciplined in a lot of situations, and we all do. But why not make that easier on yourself? If there are no games on my Supernote, I can't play games on my Supernote. Now, that doesn't mean I can't doodle, and you doodle on a pad of paper, but I can't play games. If I have to intentionally go to email to check email on the Supernote, I'm not getting bombarded with notifications. My calendar has my Google Calendar. I can see my events at a glance, but I'm not getting constant notifications and it's not interrupting my flow when I need to use the device for what it is. And I think that's part of the reason that it's so important because we have to recognize that not everyone has the same level of self discipline. Not everyone has the same environmental controls as far as where they're working, how they're working, what their distraction levels are. There are a million things that could cause you, even just the mental discipline of sometimes wanting to switch between different projects or tasks, but wanting to stay in a certain medium. For example, I'm designing 4 courses, implementing a learning management system, co-leading that with a whole group and host of people at the university. And there are times when I need to focus in a specific way on those tasks that doesn't involve being on my PC. But there are times when I may need to sit down and I need just to collect my thoughts. And the Supernote allows me to do that, still working on multiple projects, but doing it in a very intentional way and being able to just shoot off into different notes and brainstorming and mind mapping and all of these different things I want to do. And now with the to-do list feature, circling and creating a few to-dos here and there as well, and then still attending meetings while not being bombarded by everything else. And I want to tell a quick story, and some of you may identify with this, some of you may not. But, I grew up in the 1970s, and when I was in kindergarten, of all things, in Summerville, South Carolina, went to Ladson Elementary School. And I had probably the best kindergarten teacher in the world because back then they didn't call what they call ADHD now. They called it just being hyper. So you were hyperactive. And they would say that that's what you were. And there were medications that were out on the market then, but they really hadn't caught on like they did in the 80s. There were different ways of dealing with the high energy that I had. And I'll never forget that Mrs. Moultrie was her name. I don't remember her first name. As a matter of fact, I don't believe we ever called our teachers by their first names in the late 70s. But I was one of those kids that had a ton of energy, and sometimes it could get a little bit out of control, not in a violent way or anything like that, but I couldn't stop moving. And we had an agreement for story time, for example. Mrs. Moultrie would allow me to pace at the back of the room. So just walk back and forth. And, as long as I wasn't interrupting and as long as I wasn't disrupting the class, I was allowed to pace back and forth. And I'll never forget this. I mean, I was a 6-year-old kid at the time. But the way she approached that issue, I wasn't being sent to the principal's office. I wasn't being disciplined. And again, we had an agreement. I was allowed to pace until she told me that I was done. And she would always say the same thing. She would say, Eddie, it's time to sit down now. And I would sit down. The only reason I tell that story is because there are so many things we've learned since the late 70s. And even in the last 10, 5, or, 3 years, that to say that everyone can just turn off their notifications or everyone can just take it down a notch and control their urge to do other things just ignores the reality of that we're all different and we approach the world differently and we do things in ways that are the most productive for us. Whether you need to have medication to help you control uh, that, I learned how to channel it instead into different things. But there's nothing wrong with either approach. What I'm putting forward here is that our devices can enhance or detract from our experiences and our productivity. If I know that I'm prone to go down a rabbit hole, if I have too many distractions, if I have games on my device, for that matter, I don't even install games on my work PC or on my home PC, except for one. I have one on my home PC that I do occasionally play, but I don't have many. I do have games on my phone, and I use my phone as more of a recreational tool, except for when I do some of the recording that we talked about earlier. But for 90% of the stuff I do, I watch and consume content on my phone and I play games, whether it's Super Auto Pets with the kids or whether it's One of the other games I have that just helps my mind work through the energy and dissipate it. If I'm saying anything here, it's that we need to recognize that while the term may feel like a catchphrase to some of distraction free, to others, it's a lifeline in some ways of I really need a device that is going to allow me to do what I need it to do without being overwhelmed or inundated. And we haven't even talked about the learning curve aspect of it or the what I call the barrier to entry. For those of you who aren't as familiar with educational technologies, almost everyone has dealt with an Adobe product. But in the educational technology space, they have this product called Captivate, which is a phenomenal instructional design tool. It allows you to do high level animations. It allows you to do all kinds of embedded questions and just in time learning activities. It's a phenomenal tool. But it's not for everyone. It's very menu driven. It's very intensive that you have to learn all of the different functions and filters and components. And there are other competitors out there that allow you to do some of those same things, but they build it into the software so it's more intuitive. And I think that's where you can get into this whole distraction free. Sometimes it's not even that you're minimizing some of the functions. You're just taking the friction away. You're removing some of the barriers. You're automating some of the processes. And I think that's where I may differ with how some other people think through these types of issues. I don't ever want my technology to get in my way. I don't want to go in and have to spend so much time learning the technology that I've wasted time that I could have been putting to more productive use. It's one reason that you've seen my videos on Obsidian, and I'm still using Obsidian, but Obsidian is kind of one of those projects that is over here in the parking lot. And if you're familiar with some leadership theory, they talk about, the thing that you're focusing on, the thing in front of you, and then there's the parking lot. And the parking lot's where you put those things that can wait. And that's what Obsidian is to me. If time frees up in my schedule, I will go into Obsidian and I will start kind of backfilling some of the things that I'm doing. And I still will dump things in there, but the connections and the connecting of the dots and some of those other functions, I'm still slowly building that backlog so that I have a good history. And then once I'm caught up, once I have all of that done, moving forward, I plan to use that as a very effective tool for me. But again, I don't use all of the bells and whistles. I don't install all of the third party plugins. As a matter of fact, I don't think I have anything but core plugins and the Supernode plugin. And that's an intentional choice on my part. Same reason on my Supernode, I don't install anything but reading apps and the standard apps because for me, I don't need those extra distractions. We need to be more inclusive in thinking through why people make the decisions they make rather than saying you're not doing it the right way because you're not controlling your own environment. Maybe the way to control your own environment is to purchase a device that makes you the most comfortable. Just food for thought. Well, thank you all so much for hanging out. Thank you for being supporters of the channel. Thank you for all of the encouragement and being here throughout all of this. There are more videos coming. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Supernote. As always, that's one of the things I use all the time, so I talk about it quite a bit. We're also going to talk a little bit about something really cool, at least from my perspective, that I've been wanting to talk about but haven't had time yet, and that would be InstructureCon. If you're familiar with Instructure, they own the Canvas learning management system, and I attended their conference last month, and I want to talk a little bit about, what that is bringing to the table. And that's for another video. But thank you so much. Please continue to like, subscribe. Anything you want to do for the channel would be great. The more that you continue to like, subscribe, comment, ask questions, share your point of view, the more the algorithm will promote me and put me out there for more people to see and make it possible for me to keep delivering content that is hopefully useful. Until next time, I will see you soon and have a great one.